Hi, I'm Marty Schukert. It's good to be here talking to you about the Main Street corridor in Mascoutah and about planning issues that include land use and urban design. These are two somewhat different areas and are both very interesting to our project. Uh, and you will see a series of slides that divide these by segment of the street. When we talk about land use, we talk about the distribution of different uses on the land. This helps us to identify where there are different clusters of different uses like retail, services, residential, public, civic uses like churches, of which there are quite a few along Main Street. It's interesting to us and helps us plan because it defines patterns of activities. It's also important as we move forward in the planning process because it helps us calculate the amount of building and land that's used for different things, which relate to market demands, which our colleagues from DSI will be talking about. And it also helps us look at underused land and development opportunities. When we talk about urban design, this is a little bit different. Urban design deals with, as you can imagine, the design of the city. It considers the relationship of buildings to each other, the relationship of those buildings to the street, and also to the surrounding city and surrounding neighborhoods. Urban design looks at a lot of issues that include things like the size and character of buildings, the character of the street, the connections that we can observe, open spaces, environmental resources. Altogether, it helps us to identify opportunities that will help us create a more attractive corridor, a main street that is really a delight to be in. This is a relatively long corridor, and so we find it useful to divide it into three character segments for our consideration. So the west segment, which is largely residential, runs from 6th Street to 1st Street if we go from west to east. The central segment, which has much of the commercial development and Main Street type buildings, extends from 6th Street to Jefferson Street to Illinois 4. And the east segment, which takes us on to the eastern edge of the city, extends from Jefferson to Mine Street. So it helps to look at these different areas that all have somewhat distinctive characters. So let's start at the west and look at the corridor, the part of the corridor from West Street to 6th Street. And by the way, when we talk about the corridor, we are looking at not just the buildings and sites along Main Street, but also at everything from State to Church Street. Because we want to go a block deep, there are some significant opportunities that are presented by the backs of those blocks as well. The west segment is largely residential. It starts out at the west with the 6th Street intersection, which has a convenience store. There are some key features along it, including multifamily buildings. As we move farther to the east, it becomes somewhat more commercial. But importantly, we have the Historic Museum in the middle, and in the middle of that, a drainage way. And when we look at drainage corridors like creeks, they provide the possibility of rather important environmental features. You'll also notice that an outline of an area a little bit west of 2nd Street that connects with the Historical Museum, where we've got some commercial vacancy, some opportunities there. And that kicks out as kind of an interesting area for us to look at as well. You'll also notice that there are some places that we've outlined in white here, which I'm drawing a circle around. There are parking lots, for the most part, that could be a little bit more efficient and could provide us some opportunities for more efficient use, for some landscaping, for improving the overall appearance of something that we certainly need in business areas, and that's parking. But a major anchor of this corridor is, of course, the museum, and we think the Greenway in the center of it. As we then look at urban design, Now we start to look at the scale of buildings. So we have great buildings like the museum, the very lovely historic multifamily building in the middle of the street, in the middle of the corridor, some historic houses, as well as more contemporary commercial development. It's important to note too that the street gets a little bit wider here. It's narrower in the central part, gets a little bit wider here, so it expands up to 40 feet. I've talked a little bit about some of the opportunities that are presented along this as well in terms of parking lot redesign, the possibility of commercial development, and we think the very interesting opportunity presented by the Creeks Greenway that bisects this part of the study area. Now, when we move on to the central part of the segment, this is where the major commercial development in the corridor exists. So if we look at a land use map, and by the way, as you can see in these maps, we use colors that are color coded to different kinds of uses, and have done a survey of each of these types of uses. We have a good deal of commercial use. This is primarily where our commercial uses are. Buildings like Ace Hardware are major commercial anchors. You'll also notice that many of our commercial uses are in fact not retail at all, but they're personal services and offices. So Main Street might be able to benefit if the market tells us that this is advantageous at additional retail development. There's a good deal of vacant commercial space as well, as you can see in this central area on either side of Railway Street. But there are other uses that exist as well. We have a lovely block of commercial of residential structures and the bed and breakfast near First Street. We have the mill, which is a phenomenal use, and City Hall and the existing town square that are right here in the middle of the district on either side of Railway, and that's also showing you the possibility of commercial development as well. The mill could be, and that whole site could be a very exciting one in terms of civic development, maybe open space, and of course has Mascouta's lovely City Hall as part of that as well. You'll also see a number of areas that are outlined in yellow here that I'm drawing a circle around, and those are opportunities for residential infill that are sites that might be able to be opportunities for new development that can get people get more and more people living along the corridor. There also this part of the study area also has major urban design features. First of all, the street, as we hinted at before, gets a little bit narrower here, so there's only parking on one side. The green space, the mill, the wonderful three-story building next to it along Railway Street provides some interesting opportunities for adaptive reuse, for historic preservation. A building like the Ace Hardware building, located right here, is a really lovely example of two-story commercial architecture with kind of almost Victorian components to it. And overall, the scale of the buildings that are 2 stories, hugging tightly to the street, provide a really beautiful experience and great urban scale that we would like to preserve. Also, there are opportunities for placemaking at major intersections like Jefferson Street and Railway Street as well. All of these things are features that, as we look at the more detailed planning, provide some really exciting opportunities for for new kinds of development and for new options. Finally, we come to the east segment of the street, where we transition from the commercial core to again a more residential feeling as we begin to leave town. So the block between Independence and Jefferson is still largely commercial. Then we transition to a more residential environment, punctuated by the large parking lot for Holy Childhood Church. And one thing that presents itself as an interesting opportunity is the possibility of engaging this incredibly beautiful church more directly to Main Street by a minor redesign of that parking lot. As we move to the east, things get a lot more rural in a hurry, and Mine Road really is a very strong dividing line between the city and, in fact, the St. Louis metropolitan area and the rural area around it. So that sort of strong line of demarcation is an interesting feature as well. Again, we're showing some opportunities that might present themselves for additional residential development where land may transition into other uses. And again, as I mentioned earlier, these land use considerations all present opportunities moving forward that we're going to want people to react to, and that can help drive the direction of the plan. From an urban design perspective, we do have the key intersection at Jefferson Street, which is an important factor in thinking about how you arrive in the downtown district. We have some historic buildings that are very attractive. The significant reuse for residential purposes of the kind of gateway building at Mine and Main, and the possibility again of engaging Holy Childhood Church into the street and really taking advantage of that very unique and wonderful landmark in the city of Mascoutah. So all in all, there are really wonderful opportunities here that we think are going to be very promising and very exciting to us as we think with you about the future of the Main Street corridor and of our entire study area between Church and State Street.